Vibe coding. Justin, is this going to be the end of programming or filling the internet with bad code, ways to get hacked, and many other things?
Well, most of everything I've heard about it, it's job security for anybody who does know how to program or came up in it because it seems like the good news is that vibe coding essentially is anywhere up to, from what I've seen, about 125% more coding or pumping out more projects. However, some of those same studies have shown that 27% of that code is either full of bugs, vulnerabilities, or other issues that people have to go back and debug or correct. Vibe coding is something that is getting tossed around a lot, especially if you're on LinkedIn or any of the social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook. But essentially, what it is it was really introduced, or a lot of people give credit to Andrej Karpathy, early 2025 announcing it. Anybody who's not familiar with who he is, he's one of the co-founders of OpenAI, research scientist. He's been back and forth. He helped co-found OpenAI, which is ChatGPT's developer, left, did a stint as the director of AI with Tesla, came back, and now he's really in the last 2 years been working on investing in AI companies and startups, creating his own startup. So he knows a thing or two about AI. But essentially, vibe coding is a term that refers to using language models or similar AI powered tools to assist in programming and coding. And so essentially, an individual would be able to take something like Claude or ChatGPT or a custom tool, and they would be able to use natural language to communicate, tell it what they want, and then have that tool or model develop an app or a code or a script for them. And so you could see where this would be incredibly beneficial, one, for anyone who's overworked programming, or anyone who is getting into it and needs to finish something that's a little complex, or they want to use it to learn while they go. You can see where that's beneficial. However, if you think like most programmers, or you think like me when I look at auditing and processes, what kind of vulnerabilities can this include? I've heard stories of people using ChatGPT for coding, and one of the libraries that it instructed to bring in or download for the project was somehow corrupt or even malicious. And as soon as it was entered into the code, it caused a vulnerability. So there's any number of things that if an individual does not know what to look for, or they don't have the experience or skill level, it can create a huge mess and maybe even some liabilities for companies.
The fundamental concept we've taught from the beginning of if you use AI to generate something, you need to make sure someone in the office has the expertise to be able to verify it's not hallucinating. And to me, the same rule applies here. And this is why you might use it for pieces, but you better have someone who can go through and go, oh, what's going on? And make sure that it is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And I've heard the same thing where it's made some calls out somewhere. And why did it do that? They didn't know it. These systems right now will keep evolving, but I've heard sometimes a good percentage can be hallucinations. That means, for people who don't know that, that means it's generating something that is inaccurate. Now they're going to keep evolving, but we're going to see a lot of stuff being thrown out there quickly because they can do it. I talked to someone who was able to substitute some work on their website, and they were able to build a bunch of code. They were happy. Well, what if there's a call that would be vulnerable to their client base off of that? And they just put it in, but they don't know enough looking at the code to make sure that's not it. Just like we have tons and tons of goofy images out there that are useful and not, and we have tons and tons of just content being thrown out that's not very good because someone didn't verify it in text generation from AI. I think we're going to see a lot of noise coming out too. And buyer beware doesn't mean you
Mhm.
shouldn't use it. Like you said, if I were a coder and I want to try something out, I might go and say, build this for me. And I'd go through and go, oh, okay, that's an interesting way to do it. I might use that.
And we're seeing it's not going anywhere. OpenAI just released an agent that's specifically built for this. You've seen some of the model updates from the various companies come out, and they're specifically detailed or they're described as being good at coding or programming. And ever since we've been doing this, Martin, it's been the same thing. You see every industry getting touched by this. There's content generation and it's great and everyone uses it, and the next thing you know, people are getting hit on their websites, they're losing followers. They come to find out that they're not proofreading their content. There's all type of errors or just weird language in it, when if they had just read over it, proofread it, made it their own, that could have saved them a lot of headache. You look at lawyers who are using it in court cases, it's hallucinating. They're not looking through it. And then some of them reportedly have even had their careers ended in law. They've had to go to somewhere else to make a living. And so, why is programming any different? And it's much more than just, oh, I got this written in an hour. Now it's going to take me 10 hours to fix. It's the same concept really as using ChatGPT to create content or create ideas that you can then make your own. And it saved you a lot of time in developing something. But like you said, you still have to check behind it. And so that human in the loop really needs to remain there. You got to check behind these things. And so, me, programming is something, Python, something that on and off I've always played with. I really got to double down myself and learn it. And so I understand the fundamentals and I'm constantly trying to add to that knowledge all the time. But at the same time, I wanted to see. So I know a little bit, I know enough to be dangerous, maybe build some little apps, play a few games and whatnot. But I really wanted to try something. And so I actually paid for the pro version of Claude
Great, great.
and went in and tried some of this. And so you can see some of my prompt on a concept that I wanted to play around with. It was a app that you could download to a Windows desktop that would, as you worked, if it noticed you slowed down during certain tasks or something like that happened, it would take note and ask you if you needed assistance, which if you did, it would link to free open source projects that you can learn Excel or you could gain skills from. Maybe it's Microsoft training, things like that. As you can see, I worked on some sources, put in some prompts, really took time outside of this to really flesh out what I wanted, why I wanted it, what I wanted, what the purpose of it was. And then I wanted it to work on creating it. So you can see here, this is the dashboard for, Delta IOTA Learning, which is one of my projects in, small incremental learning or tasks eventually build up to, monumental or substantial progress and learning. And so it's not much to look at right here. It does have a nice dashboard for a real basic function. Again, Claude gave me some recommendations. Of course, I asked it for more, and you can see that as I go through, it's giving me more and more recommendations. So here now, I've asked it for, some Excel recommendations on what that would look like. Here, you can see there's a really quick kind of tip and tricks function to it. And so it's progressing. And I was really getting interested in it and having a lot of fun doing this. And then I started getting errors. What that did for me is that triggered that red flag part of my brain where it said, well, I really need to start looking at this a different way. And so it's really fun what I'm doing. Obviously, this is not something I would just publish and see if it worked. If you were to read through this dialogue, what you're going to see is my whole conversation starts taking a turn more away from functionality at the moment to more of security. And so it's, I started asking questions. What kind of errors could happen? What impact could this have? Is it secure? Can you list any libraries that would need to be downloaded in order to make this secure? And no matter how many times or recommendations it gave me, I started getting out of my depth to where I said, unless I had somebody who really could look through this and really knew libraries, really knew, vulnerabilities, audited this kind of code, I would not be comfortable moving forward. That was a good learning thing for me because I did learn different ways that I could add different functionalities. I could add, different tables. And so you can see here my dashboard's changing as I move through. You can tell I've moved back through more of the functionality. And this was interesting with security settings. One of the things I asked it to do is it able to update as Windows updates? And so then you're getting into some interesting things of, well, permissions and, how would you do that? And, could it even perform that? Could it even update with Microsoft updates, or would you still have to update it on its own? That is something where you're getting beyond just standard programming to how is it connecting with the operating system, and is that in itself a vulnerability? And so you could see this as a rabbit hole. And from here, if you were to look at the chat, you would say I kind of just dropped the whole safety thing and just went back to having fun with it because I started really getting dizzy chasing the rabbit. But anyway, you can see that even just some real laid back playing around with it, it's still pretty impressive on what it can do. And so someone who does know what they're doing, they do understand, the back end of it and what makes for a safe app could really take and just crank out some really cool projects or have multiple projects working on the back burner while they're fine tuning and launching other things. And so I think vibe coding, I think we're really not there for someone to just step into it and start doing it safely. Although there are people who are doing it, and I think it's just kind of flip of a coin if it works or not, or it backfires on them. I think some people are really fortunate that they've done pretty good so far with what they have. I think it's only a matter of time before they stumble on one. But I really do think now, do I think it's to a point where, like we've heard with Meta, starting to lay off or not hire entry level developers anymore? That would really, I guess, depend on internal processes and what model they're using, and then what kind of job description that introductory developer really is. I could see that happening if maybe you had mid-level developers who were using something like Claude or, Llama to build up code and build up projects that maybe entry-level developers once did. And then they got it to a point where it could be passed to a senior developer. I think that you could do, but I think, is it taking jobs at this point? No, I don't think it's necessarily taking jobs. I think it's just you're starting to see companies kind of reorganize around what the tools can do, is what I think we're seeing. But anyway, it's fun to play with. But again, you really need to make sure that you know what you're doing if you're going to be putting this stuff out there.
Absolutely. Okay, Justin, I'd like you to show some people just the fundamental of this. Let's try to get it to create a simple Pong game or something like that. I want you to deliberately not make the prompt perfect because you have the skills to write excellent prompts. Yeah,
So
something real simple. Look at that. Take a
we'll
moment.
start with, can you create a basic Pong game that I can play? And this is
Perfect.
using 3.7 Sonnet. And so it's drafting the artifact. You can see that in real time, which I played a good bit of Pong on Atari growing up. So we're gonna see if it can hold to it. So now you see it is updating the paddle position. We're getting the environment set up. I can tell right now I'm going to be moving the paddle with my keyboard apparently.
Hmm.
All right, now we're looking at the boundaries. Now we're looking at scoring. How is it going to keep score? What constitutes gore? Okay, there we go. All right, let's see. Now I'm going to use up and down arrows to move.
Yeah. And
Oh, there we go. And my
which one's
mouse.
you?
So I'm green.
All right.
I mean, this has got a pretty good Atari
Okay.
feel to it.
You know,
Yeah.
you got to admit, you can see why people are drawn in. I want to do something real simple to show them this is it. Now, Justin, would I immediately download this on my PC and say, go for it? No, I'd want to look
No.
over and see what it's calling, but this does at least demonstrate what is occurring.
And you see, it's pretty good. It's making me work for it. I mean, it's still one up
Yeah.
on me. And
Yeah.
so in just a few minutes, we've got, and I've seen some pretty impressive stuff that people have created. I mean, this thing is no slouch, you can tell. Oh, there we go. Tie game. I'm gonna go ahead and quit while I'm ahead.
Yeah. Quit while you're ahead. That's excellent. Yeah.
And you can see it's pretty easy when you're looking at your dialogue. It
Yeah.
has features, it has explanation, but then of course you can always click out. You can publish this, copy it, or download it.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. This is what we wanted to start a discussion on. And to me, the most important thing, Justin, is somebody that goes, oh, I can just do this and throw it on
Mhm.
my system. And they don't have someone to look over it to make sure it's done right. You might have just built in a vulnerability that could have access to your customer. So this is the value of understanding its development. You can learn a great tool, Justin, for just learning something about coding. Just going
Right.
through a simple thing like that and go, oh, this is where it's doing this. And this is where I don't think we're going to lose all the programmers in the next 6 months.
And how I use it is really rather than going out and doing something, most people I know who really want to really dip their toe in it, and I mean, it's the first time they've ever done it. They may look at MIT resources and little, kind of games out there, which, yeah, I've gone there. That's how I learned, honestly, some real basic Python was just, building small games, Hello World, that whole thing. And so what I've been doing with Claude, especially, is I'll ask it to build something very small, and I'll tell it with the purpose of being able to explain to me how it did it. Then what I'm kind of getting is a tutor for programming, a Python tutor. And so it'll build something real small and then it'll walk me through it. And then what I can ask it to do is I can say, give me a problem and depending on how I complete it, make it harder or, coach me along. What I have noticed is I've even though I may not get it right every time, I am getting a better understanding of how Python works and the basic structure of it. And so, if I apply 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes a week, even to just going in, doing that and really focusing on it, eventually I'm gonna really learn kind of through osmosis in a way from doing it. I'm applying it and I'm being tutored while I'm doing it. And that's how I found I really enjoy doing it. And eventually am I going to be a master Python programmer? I don't think so, but at least I'm enjoying it and I'm learning something and I may get to a point where I can, effectively build small projects on my own.
Excellent. We want to hear from you. What's your view on vibe coding? Hopefully, if you have a business and you got someone saying, I can do that on vibe coding, you can at least go, do we have someone that can cross that code and make sure it's not doing a function call to a virus or something else? And you'll find other links below on our training. We do one on one work, we have work with teams and groups and certificate programs. So make sure to check the text below. And this is Martin Brossman and
Dr. Justin Rose.
Have a fantastic day. Click subscribe and the bell.